I used to brag that no matter how broke I got, I'd walk away with a $30 million severance. The gossip forums went wild, calling me a gold-digging leech. Then, the very next day, news broke that the Hamilton Group's core bid proposal had been leaked and their finances were on the verge of collapse. Even the old man, her grandfather who always treated me like a joke, personally called me back to the Hamilton estate to put out the fire. The haughty butler and the entire staff were lined up at the door, bowing as if I were their last hope. But my real talent isn't cooking, and it's not some rags-to-riches story. It's the system in my head that just came back online, telling me her first love never had the full proposal and was just bluffing with a few useless scraps of data. This crisis that looked like the end of the road for the Hamiltons had a secret escape hatch all along. And the only reason I was the one to pull off the ultimate reversal was because, for 3 years of marriage, my wife never once let me set foot in her bedroom. She said that when her first love came back to the States, I was to take my $30 million, get out of her life, and disappear. I had always followed the terms of our agreement to the letter. Before I left, I even carefully smoothed out the sheets on my bed and neatly arranged the baby bibs I'd bought in a fit of optimism. Then I canceled my phone number, determined to vanish completely. But later, when her high and mighty first love betrayed the Hamilton family, no one ever expected it would be me, the useless live-in husband, who would have to step in and save them all. With 5 minutes until Olivia got home from work, I had a full spread of her favorite dishes ready. The table was laden with strawberry maple tofu, sautéed pea shoots, and a sweet and sour poached fish. The butler, standing off to the side, watched with undisguised admiration. MS. Hamilton showed incredible foresight when she chose you as her husband. Yeah, I think so too, I said. Whenever Olivia gets stressed, she tends to binge eat. But since you've been here, that's gotten so much better. I shot him a sideways glance. No wonder he'd managed to talk his way up to head of the household staff. The door clicked open and Olivia walked in. Her amber eyes glanced at the food on the table for only a second before she frowned. I don't have an appetite. Meet me in the study. We need to talk. My stomach clenched, but I headed for the stairs. On my way out, I couldn't resist snagging a piece of the fish and popping in my mouth. I savored the taste. Who cares if it's a weird recipe? This stuff is amazing. You don't have to cook anymore, Olivia said the moment I entered the study, getting straight to the point. Her eyes didn't rest on me for even a second. They just darted back and forth across the document spread over her desk. If you're not happy with it, I could try some different recipes. There's no point. The last time you had a culinary inspiration and made that batch of green beans, I spent 3 days in the ICU. The company's stock hit an all-time low. We can't afford another disaster like that. As she said it, a flicker of genuine fear finally crossed her face. I just stood there, stunned, still in my apron and holding a spatula. What I mean is, you don't have to live here anymore. Because Jerry Clarkson is coming back tomorrow. Our contract is over. Olivia said it in a slow, deliberate tone, as if she were leaving the door open for me to bargain. But I just stood there in silence for a long time. Finally, my eyes began to burn, and I defiantly lifted my chin. Fine, I understand. The words were barely out of my mouth before I turned and walked out of the study, never once looking back. The heavy thud of the door, closing, echoed through the room, leaving Olivia frozen in place, her unspoken counteroffer dying on her lips. Her hand was still hovering over a second contract on her desk. The words lifetime contract seemed to glare up from the page, bright enough to be blinding. Back in my room, I collapsed onto the bed and just stared at the ceiling, my hands clutching my hair. It wasn't that I was heartbroken. It was the incessant voice in my head, a constant noise that was driving me insane. Hey, host, don't just lie there. You can't deviate from the script. You're supposed to have several more chapters of push-and-pull drama. Why would you just hand your spot over to her first love like that? If the story falls apart, who's going to take the blame? There goes our performance bonus for the quarter. The system's voice sounded like a sweet little girl's, but its obnoxious tone could make my head throb. Shut up. I just want some quiet. Quiet? My name's Taki, not quiet. Just get out of my head. According to the usual tropes in these kinds of stories, Olivia needed a husband on demand to help her navigate a rough patch in her career. The hard part was she was still hung up on her first love. The impossible part was that first love was about to return, which meant I, the live-in husband, was supposed to start fighting for my pathetic place in her life. Even though the script was practically written in stone, with Olivia slowly starting to lean my way, the whole situation felt impossibly difficult, especially after having my confidence shattered again and again. If I stayed, waiting for my CEO wife's first love to make his triumphant return, my dignified exit would quickly devolve into a highlight reel of my own humiliation. Compared to her childhood friend, Jerry Clarkson, the guy was a walking success story, the kind of perfect son every parent dreams of. And me? I was just a clueless recent grad whose family had been struck by sudden tragedy. To make ends meet, I was waiting tables at a private karaoke lounge. That's where I met Olivia, who was completely wasted. After a series of events that are definitely not safe for work and cannot be described in detail, I had dazedly signed a contract to be her live-in husband. We both agreed on the terms. Before Jerry Clarkson returned to the States, I would move into the Hamilton family mansion and serve as their live-in husband for 3 full years. During those 3 years, I was to keep a low profile, and any kind of physical intimacy with Olivia was completely off the table. But whenever she needed me to appear in an event, I had to be there without question, acting as her legally wedded shield. Back then, I desperately needed the money for my mother's medical bills. I would have agreed to anything, no matter how demanding or degrading. And to be fair, aside from all the rules, the Hamiltons treated me well. The only other expectation was that I use my natural talent for cooking to help Olivia manage her stress eating. Now that I was finally free, I couldn't give a damn about how the stupid story was supposed to go. The system chose me to be the protagonist without ever asking if I wanted the part. For all I know, this damn system is the reason my mom got so sick in the first place. The next morning, as sunlight filtered through the trees in the courtyard, I woke up early, just like I always did. But this time, it was to make my last breakfast in the Hamilton home. Olivia was up earlier than usual, too. Her silk nightgown clung to her stunning figure, but her eyes were red and swollen. It was obvious she hadn't slept at all. About what I said yesterday, she began, her voice hoarse. She trailed off, seemingly at a loss for how to ask me to stay. I know, I said. I'm moving out today. I'd spent all night tossing and turning, rehearsing this conversation in my head. But when she heard the finality in my voice, the color still drained from her face. She just gave a slight nod, then turned to retreat to her room, just like she always did. You should eat something first. I didn't exactly put my heart and soul into it. Olivia stopped. She hesitated for a moment before turning back and walking to the table. For a second, a different light flickered in her exhausted eyes. You made breakfast? It doesn't look half bad. I made some porridge with last night's leftover rice, heated up some frozen dumplings from the store, and put out a few pickles. As long as I didn't burn anything, this was about the best I could do. While she ate, I stayed quiet and attentive, playing the part of the doting husband from some old family soap opera. Try not to drink so much at your work dinners. You need to take care of yourself. Jerry will take care of me from now on. She said it with such sincerity, didn't she? Fine. We'll see who's more stubborn. I changed the sheets in the master bedroom to that set you like. There are condoms in the nightstand drawer. I know you're not planning on having kids right now, so, be safe. The porcelain spoon in her hand clinked against her bowl. The sound was followed by a suffocating silence, as if all the air had been sucked out of the room. Okay, I don't know how long she was quiet. I just remember that when she finally spoke, the resolve I'd been holding on is shattered, and I felt a sharp pain in my chest. I finished packing and was about to say my goodbyes to the household staff. But when I opened my door, they were already lined up neatly in the hallway. They stood there, chests puffed out and chins up, looking as if they were assembled for a formal ceremony. Wasn't this a bit much for a send-off? I firmly shook the butler's calloused hand and thanked him. Thank you for everything these past 3 years. There's no need for that. The butler awkwardly pulled his hand away. Take care of yourself, son. We're all waiting for Mr. Jerry to arrive. If you don't have anything else, You should probably get going so it's not awkward for everyone. Jerry, right? The new hire was already on his way. They really couldn't wait to fill the position. Could this possibly get any more awkward? As it turns out, yes, it could. Because Jerry Clarkson was already standing in the doorway with a beaming Olivia on his arm. Jerry's eyes flickered over me for a fraction of a second before he opened his arms and embraced the butler, greeting him warmly. It's been too long, my friend. I just stood there on the sidelines, watching their happy little family reunion. Everything was perfect except for me, the awkward, out-of-place spare part. I don't know how long I stood there before their pleasantries finally wound down, and they seemed to remember I existed. Jerry gestured toward me, then leaned in to whisper in Olivia's ear. So, this is the charity case you were telling me about? She gave a slight nod, not saying a word, her expression still that familiar, lofty look of disdain. Thank you for looking after Olivia these past 3 years, Jerry said to me. I was just doing my job. There's no job to it, he said. It was my failure, letting you help her for 3 years when you had no real obligation. Don't worry, we'll be sure to compensate you for your time. He kept saying all the right things, but his eyes never left Olivia, his adoration for her practically pouring out. I had no choice but to play along, extending my hand for a brief shake. The changing of the guard went surprisingly well. No one tried to stop me. No one made a scene. The entire thing was coated in a bizarrely polite and harmonious atmosphere. To be specific, they were afraid I wouldn't leave, and I was afraid they would humiliate me. Back in my cramped, damp little apartment, I suddenly remembered something and jolted the system awake. Taki, do me a favor and check something. Check what? What's Olivia's current affection level for me? After everything that's happened, you're only asking about this now? Just shut up and check. The system went silent for a second. I knew it. My gamble had paid off. Before you left the Hamilton estate, Olivia's affection level for you was only at 60%. The moment you walked out the door, it jumped to 80. How did you manage that? People feel safe with things they can't control. It's the things you can't grasp, the things you can't predict, that ignite that stubborn desire to win. So you're playing hard to get? Trying to speedrun the seduction quest? The system's synthesized little kid voice took on a contemplative tone. Don't read too much into it. I just don't want the rest of the story to follow the original script. In the original story, Jerry's return was supposed to be the catalyst that pushed Olivia and me to the next level. But it also meant I'd be targeted for revenge and end up in a coma for years. And my mother, who was already so sick, would die soon after hearing the news. And even if Olivia stayed faithfully by my bedside, and I eventually woke up to a future with both love and a successful career, what's more devastating than wanting to take care of your parents, only to realize it's too late? Was I supposed to let my life become a tragedy just to add some epic, poignant drama to a novel? I'm not that noble. In fact, I'd really like to find the original author and punch them in the face. That whole "a simple life is a happy life" thing only works if you actually have enough money to live. Besides, that $30 million payment hadn't even hit my account yet. And until it did, who's to say my future was destined to be ordinary? Just thinking about that massive sum of money arriving in my account was enough to wash away a lot of the sadness I felt over Olivia. The system, ever perceptive, picked up on my change of heart and couldn't resist a snarky comment. So much for ambition. What do you know? You're just a machine. As soon as I said it, the system went silent. I couldn't tell if it was sulking or if it had just permanently signed out of my life. In any case, for money, I was willing to forgive the entire world. But that good mood only lasted a few days before it came crashing down. When the promised payment never showed up, I started to get anxious. A family like the Hamiltons, with their reputation, wouldn't just stiff their former live-in husband on his severance pay, right? But not only did I not see the money, my supplementary credit card had been canceled. Serves you right, the system chimed in. Shut up. I was furious. I stormed over to the Hamilton building to confront Olivia, but I was stopped by security in the lobby. Mr. Hayes, the guard said, Mr. Clarkson left specific instructions that you're not to be allowed up. Before, The staff here had always been perfectly respectful. Now all I got were cold shoulders and mocking glances. A kicked-out contract husband. Probably the most pathetic, worthless role on the planet. Just as I was about to retreat in humiliation, I ran right into Jerry at the door. From the looks of his sharp suit and polished appearance, he'd clearly already landed a cushy position at the company. Technically, Jerry was the new live-in husband, but he was starting from a much better place than I had. He at least came with a pedigree. Not that he seemed to see it that way. On the surface, he maintained that polite, humble facade, but his words were sharp and probing. You could feel the barely concealed aggression radiating off him. "He's a friend of mine," Jerry announced to the guards. "Don't stop him. We're all family here, after all." "Understood, Mr. Clarkson." The way he was acting, you'd think he'd just been crowned king of the world. Once we were in the elevator, he finally dropped the act and spoke, his voice laced with suspicion. "What do you want with Olivia?" "The severance package we agreed on. It was never paid." "Oh." I explained the situation, and his relaxed expression instantly clouded over as he started calculating something in his head. "You don't need to bother Olivia with trivial things like this. Come to my office. I'll take care of it." It didn't matter to me who paid, as long as the money ended up in my account. But when he heard the actual number, over $20 million, the color drained from his face. It was immediately followed by a wave of fury, though he managed to restrain himself with the last shred of his composure. "That much? Olivia promised you that much money. What did you expect? I'll have to confirm that with her. Go home and wait for my call." Seeing he wasn't going to be any help, I decided I'd just find Olivia myself. But as I turned to leave, he stopped me. He shoved me hard against the wall. "Didn't I tell you to leave her alone? There's nothing between you two anymore." All the resentment and frustration he'd been bottling up for days came pouring out. "Don't you think 20 million is a little much for a guy like you? Do you really think you deserve that kind of money? A man has to know his limits. Don't go reaching for things that are out of your league." "Don't forget where I come from," I said. "Wage theft is a serious crime. The courts don't look kindly on corporations stiffing a guy from the wrong side of the tracks." "Fine, then I'll wait for the court summons," she shot back. "But before that, I'd much rather receive a love letter from you." When did she learn to be so witty? Surely Jerry hadn't taught her that. On second thought, knowing Jerry's personality, Olivia probably found speaking to him at all to be a waste of her time. "Well, just remember to send me the money soon. I'm leaving." As for when I'd get my revenge on Jerry, well, revenge is a dish best served cold. "I said I'd give it to you," Olivia called out from behind me, a playful smirk in her voice. I never said how or when. I turned around to face her, taking in her playful, clever expression. She was wearing ripped jeans, a white tank top, and a black leather jacket. It was a classic, playful look straight out of a Kendall Jenner style guide. But don't let the casual chic outfit fool you. Her expression was pure petty satisfaction. She finally had some leverage over me, and she was going to enjoy it. It feels like we haven't walked along the river in a long time. The last time we'd done this was right after we got our marriage certificate. Back then, Olivia had looked at me with a grave expression. "Are you ready to be my husband?" she had asked. A line that dramatic deserved an equally over-the-top response. "Not yet," I'd replied, "but I trust that one day my powers will awaken." The only reason I had the confidence to say that was because not long before, right after I'd met Olivia, the system had appeared and started giving me a step-by-step guide on how to win her over. But later, when I realized the price the script demanded was too high, I bailed without a second thought. In the end, I was the one who started it, the one who caught feelings first, and I was the one who walked away. I started the seduction quest, but never saw it through to the end. So when it came to Olivia, I did feel a pang of guilt. Maybe the shared view of the city at night reminded her of that conversation too, because her enthusiasm for the walk suddenly vanished. She stopped in front of an old man's balloon cart and said softly, "Ex-husband, I want that one." The strange term of endearment immediately drew stares from people passing by. The quiet, breezy street suddenly felt like a stage, and I was more than happy to play my part. "All right, home after this? Your place or mine?" "Yours. It's more convenient." "Deal." She hugged the star-shaped balloon she'd wanted, her body naturally leaning just a little closer to mine. Looking back on our time together, aside from that one drunken, ridiculous night, we never had any real physical intimacy. She even made a specific rule about it. I was forbidden from setting foot in her bedroom. Although, there were a few times Olivia came home completely wasted and threw herself at me like a wildcat. The memory of those rather steamy encounters made my mouth go dry. If the system hadn't been blaring warning sirens in my head, reminding me that getting physical too early would derail the main plot, our kid would probably be in kindergarten by now. What are you thinking about? About that time you pounced on me? Olivia, curious about my long silence, had to ask. The answer slipped out before I could stop it. I expected her to get flustered and maybe even kick me, but instead she just stared for a moment before slowly replying. Maybe we should try that again. Legally, we were still married, and she was making a very clear offer. There was no logical reason for me to say no. But in the end, I ran, all the way back to my crappy little apartment. I'm such an idiot. I knew perfectly well that Olivia and I had no future together, yet I couldn't stop myself from teasing her. I should have just taken care of Jerry tonight, cleanly and efficiently. I didn't have time for romantic walks by the river. For the next few days, I spent most of my time at the hospital with my mom. She'd always had a good impression of Olivia and was constantly asking why I never brought my wife to visit. I had to keep making excuses, telling her Olivia was too busy with work. But you can only lie for so long. Once our divorce was finalized, the news of her engagement to Jerry would be all over the headlines. And when that happened, my mom would be hit with the whole truth all at once. I was racking my brain, trying to figure out how to warn her when I pushed open her hospital room door and found Olivia sitting right there. The two of them were chatting away like old friends, with no awkwardness between them at all. Olivia, the woman who had never done a single chore in her life, was standing by my mom's bed, carefully peeling an apple for her and making small talk. You two have been married for a little while now, my mom said. Have you thought about having children? Like every mother in the world, my mom eventually brought the conversation around to grandkids. Olivia looked momentarily flustered, unsure how to answer. I was just about to step in and save her when I saw a sly look cross her face. She leaned in and lowered her voice conspiratorially. Mom, it's not that I don't want to. It's Lucas. It's not anything else. It's just, he seems a little hesitant about, being intimate. He's barely been home lately, and I'm starting to worry. As she spoke, her eyes welled up, and she even managed to squeeze out a few tears. I couldn't believe it. Her ability to twist the truth was on par with the professional screenwriters. I was the one who'd been kicked out, but in her version of the story, I was the one who was neglecting her. What a little devil. I was wondering why he was spending so much time here at the hospital, my mom said. I guess he hasn't been spending much time at home either. But don't you worry. I know my son. He's not the type to fool around. Considering Olivia's insane work schedule, the fact that she took even 10 minutes to visit my mom was an incredible act of kindness. But today, she'd stayed for a full 2 hours. It was enough to make anyone's heart melt. When she left the room, she knew I was waiting for her just around the corner. As she walked towards me, I suddenly realized I'd never noticed how adorable she could be. How could you lie to my mother like that? I couldn't resist reaching out and ruffling her hair. I was trying to sound stern, but my voice came out soft. Was I lying? I don't know, she said, looking up at me. We've lived together for 3 years, and you've never once laid a hand on me. It's perfectly reasonable to suspect you might have a performance issue, don't you think? You never gave me a chance. You have to make your own opportunities, she retorted. You spend all day in the kitchen, experimenting with your bizarre culinary creations. How am I supposed to create an opportunity for you? Oh, so now it's my fault for not making a move? A small smile played on her lips, and she was about to tease me again when her phone rang. I couldn't hear what was being said, but I watched as the color drained from Olivia's face, replaced by a look of cold, hard resolve. What is it? The company's next major bid proposal. It's been leaked. How was that possible? It was Jerry. What? For a second, my mind was completely blank with shock. We raced out of the hospital. In the car, Olivia filled me in on her history with Jerry. In these wealthy, powerful families, everything is about alliances, so arranged marriages are perfectly normal. That's why I was never surprised by the rumors that Jerry was her first love. But in the 3 years we'd been together, I never once asked about this childhood friend who seemed to barely exist. I just always had a feeling that whatever was between them, it wasn't love. Whenever Olivia mentioned his name, her tone was filled with a visceral disgust. On the drive, she recounted their history with an expression of pure revulsion. Even though their families were close, they didn't actually see each other much as kids. Whenever they did meet, Jerry would always put on a big show of being attentive and charming. But underneath that gentle exterior was a cesspool of dirty little secrets. Olivia avoided him whenever she could. Even the thought of him being in her house made her feel sick. The only reason Jerry had free access to the Hamilton estate was because her grandfather had allowed it. In a twisted way, Jerry stabbing her in the back like this was almost exactly what she'd always wanted. "If you hate him that much," I said, "then why were you on his arm the other day?" She raised an eyebrow, a smirk playing at the corners of her mouth. "What's the matter? Jealous?" "No. You can hang on whoever you want." By the time we got back to the Hamilton estate, the house was in an uproar. Her grandfather was beet red and gasping for air, but he seemed to relax a little when he saw Olivia walk in. But the moment he saw me trailing behind her, his anger flared right back up. "Grandfather, I'm home." Olivia surveyed the room, nodded to her grandfather, and then seamlessly slipped into her role as the head of the family, calming everyone down. "What is he doing here?" her grandfather demanded. He completely ignored the disaster unfolding around them and aimed all his fury directly at me. During my entire time living at the estate, he'd never liked me, always looking for an excuse to put me in my place. If that incident where Olivia and I got drunk and passed out in the same bed hadn't been splashed all over the tabloids, forcing the Hamiltons to claim we were a legitimate couple on the verge of marriage, with his temper, he probably would have had me secretly taken care of. For 3 years, I did my best to stay out of his way. But things are different now. I couldn't hide behind Olivia anymore. "Grandfather," I said, "Olivia and I are not yet divorced. Technically speaking, I'm still part of this family." Seeing the furious look on his face, I felt a surge of vindictive pleasure and had to cover my mouth to stifle a laugh. The most important thing right now is figuring out how to handle Jerry. "Grandfather, the clearance I gave him wouldn't have gotten him anywhere near the core files," Olivia said. "Did he come to you?" At the mention of business, her grandfather's face fell, and his eyes actually started to well up. I never imagined the boy I watched grow up could turn into this. It turned out Jerry had gone to her grandfather in secret several times, professing his undying love for Olivia and saying he wanted to prove himself worthy of marrying into the family. He was so convincing that the old man actually believed him. Just when everyone was at their wits' end, Jerry himself strolled in, a look of smug satisfaction plastered across his face. Her grandfather was so enraged he was shaking. He pointed a trembling finger at Jerry, his lips moving, but no words came out. Jerry surveyed the room with the smile of a conqueror, but his expression hardened the moment his eyes fell on me. He looked like he wanted to tear me limb from limb, and his impotent fury was almost comical. "Jerry, what do you want?" Olivia asked, her voice ice. "It's simple," he said. "I don't want to be a charity case husband. I want you to beg me to marry you." Back when my family, the Clarksons, was on the verge of bankruptcy, my father knelt on your doorstep all night, begging for your help. Did any of you even acknowledge him? If you hadn't turned a blind eye, my family never would have fallen so far. It was clear Jerry's resentment for the Hamilton family had been festering for years. Now that he finally had his chance, he was going to make Olivia pay for it twice over. After vomiting up all that bile, he still wasn't finished. He pointed at me and yelled, "And why are you still here? Get out!" Olivia massaged her temples, saying she had a headache and was going upstairs to rest. I knew she was leaving this to me. I exchanged a look with the butler. A moment later, Jerry was securely tied to the couch. We didn't lay a hand on him. Instead, we switched into hospitality mode. I was a little out of practice in the kitchen, but I whipped up a spicy crab dish to start, followed by a heaping plate of garlic green beans. The job of feeding our guest, bite by agonizing bite, was enthusiastically taken over by her grandfather. The scene between the two of them almost looked like a heartwarming family moment from years past. When I went upstairs, I found Olivia secretly snacking on a stash of junk food she'd hidden. Her stress eating always flared up when she was under pressure. The moment she saw me in the doorway, she quickly stashed the snacks in a drawer, afraid I was going to lecture her. The movement was so smooth, but the cookie crumbs still clinging to the corner of her mouth made her look both ridiculous and a little bit cute. "He's caused you a lot of trouble, hasn't he?" I asked, hesitating for a moment. Olivia was quiet for a moment before she finally told me the truth. "Yes. If the entire bid proposal gets out, we won't have time to put together a new one. And 60% of the company's capital is tied up in this project. If our funding gets pulled, it's game over. Bankruptcy." Just listening to her lay it all out made my head ache. But right now, Olivia was the one carrying the weight of it all. Seeing that rare look of helplessness on her face, I was overwhelmed with a heavy sense of guilt. But of course, when things get this desperate, there's always a way out. Just when I thought we were truly at a dead end, the system, which had been silent for ages, finally popped back up. "Dearest host, I have returned." Taki's annoyingly cheerful voice exploded in my head, startling me so much I stumbled backward. Olivia looked at me, confused. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. I just need to use the restroom." "Okay," she said. "Don't go tonight. Your old room is still the same." Jerry never moved in. In the warm, dim light, I looked directly into her eyes. I saw something there, an unspoken emotion that seemed to resonate with the feelings I'd been hiding in my own heart. Back in my room, I immediately got in touch with Taki. At a time like this, having access to a cheat code was a miracle. Taki explained that the system had been ready to abandon the main plot, letting the story fizzle out with a disappointing ending. But after I moved out, the drama between the two protagonists intensified, and the story's previously dismal ratings suddenly went through the roof. But now the plot had stalled, so the system sent Taki back to give things a little nudge. "What kind of shoddy operation are you running?" I demanded. "Would it kill you to be a little more reliable?" Taki replied with complete, straight-faced nonsense. "In today's attention economy, do you have any idea what user engagement means? Fine, whatever. Just tell me what I'm supposed to do now." In the middle of the night, we find a quiet, secluded spot, and we take care of Jerry. "Are you insane? I'm not doing anything illegal." "Oh, well, in that case, I'm out of ideas." "Aren't you the system?" "I'm just a system. My only job is to monitor the plot. All developments have to be consistent with the world's internal logic. I can't just change things." "Then what was that just now about me taking care of Jerry?" "I said you should do it. I never said I would." After 2 hours of arguing back and forth, I finally wore Taki down. After a bit of haggling, it reluctantly agreed to activate its omniscience mode. It would let me see what other tricks Jerry had up his sleeve. The condition was that I had to get together with Olivia as soon as possible to give the readers the romance they were waiting for. Normally, as a self-proclaimed romantic, I would never agree to such a deal. But backed into a corner, I had no choice but to swallow my pride and agree, silently telling myself that one day, Olivia would understand. After a quick search, we found something completely unexpected. Jerry never had the complete bid proposal. He'd only gotten his hands on a few insignificant fragments, embellished them a bit, and was using them to bluff his way into blackmailing the Hamiltons. I breathed a sigh of relief when I learned the truth. But now the problem was how to expose him. Just then, Taki spoke up. "Actually, that part's easy. The guy downstairs is about to crack. He's on the verge of spilling everything." A blood-curdling scream shattered the silence of the night. Olivia and I exchanged a look of understanding as we both opened our doors at the same time. We could hear Jerry from downstairs, sobbing and begging for mercy. "No more. Please stop. I'll tell you everything. I'll tell you." Jerry was a mess, covered in food and slumped on the floor like a pathetic stray dog. Her grandfather was a man who wore his emotions on his sleeve. And right now, he looked like a triumphant old man who had just gotten his revenge, looking 10 years younger. The old man walked over to me and clapped me on the shoulder, a satisfied look on his face. I have to say, you have a real talent for this kind of persuasion. It's quite a skill. I was still a little dazed, holding a bowl of cold, marinated seafood. I muttered to myself, was it really that bad? As if to emphasize my point, one of the little eels in the bowl wriggled, splashing a drop of wasabi-laced marinade into my mouth. The spice hit me so hard my eyes and nose started streaming. Is what you said true? Yes. Yes, it's all true. Olivia's interrogation had gotten the basic story out of him. But being as cautious as she is, she had her team work through the night to verify everything. It took them until dawn, but they finally confirmed it. Jerry was just a common blackmailer. He never had the complete bid proposal. Her grandfather flew into a rage and ordered me back to the kitchen to whip up a few more of my specialties. It wasn't until Jerry looked up, his eyes a desperate mix of terror and pleading, that her grandfather finally, grudgingly, let him go. Who could have known that small act of mercy would turn into a decision I would come to regret more than anything? Meanwhile, Lockie from the system wouldn't shut up, hounding me to make good on my promise. You have to make your move tonight. Isn't that rushing things a bit? What do you mean, rushing things? Lockie whined. I've already hyped it up to the readers. I told them there was definitely going to be some not safe for work action tonight. Come on, man. You can't make a liar out of me. I knew I had to hold up my end of the bargain. With Lockie's incessant encouragement ringing in my ears, I paced around my room for half an hour, but I just couldn't bring myself to walk out the door. Then, with a soft click, the door opened from the outside. A soft body stumbled right into my arms. Her familiar, sweet scent instantly filled my senses. Tonight, let's not miss our chance again, okay? Olivia melted into my embrace, a wave of vulnerability washing over her, as if all the walls she had carefully built for so long had suddenly crumbled. In the moments that followed, her passion was so fierce and proactive that it literally took my breath away. And I mean that in the most direct physiological sense. She gave me no time to react, her soft lips crashing against mine with an undeniable, demanding force. The sounds that escaped my throat were strained and tight. As I was being consumed by this sudden wave of passion, I had a sudden realization. Maybe I had a naturally submissive side. This feeling of being kissed so forcefully, it was incredible. Lockie, you might want to close your eyes for this. I knew the scene was about to get a little R-rated. Who knew the little creep would sound like it was licking its lips in the void of my mind? The phone call came so abruptly that even Lockie was stunned into silence for a couple of seconds. Clearly, this wasn't in its script. The caller ID said it was my mom, but at this time of night, she should have been fast asleep in her hospital bed. I answered immediately, but it wasn't my mom's voice on the other end. It was Jerry's, cold and menacing. If you want your mother to live, you'll come find me. Just you and Olivia. No one else. My hands trembled the entire way to the hospital. Olivia sat beside me, trying to comfort me, but her own face was pale with fear. No matter how hard I fought, was I still trapped in the original story script? Was this fate, or was it karma? If everything was already predestined, did that mean my mom was already at death's door? The ominous feeling was tearing me apart inside. Even the usually carefree Lockie sounded serious. Host, your emotional state is critical. You're not fit to continue the main quest. That's my mother. The system might not understand the depth of human love for family, but it understood that some things were non-negotiable. So it said no more, retreating into a deathly silence. By the time we reached the hospital roof, Jerry had already set his stage. He had tied himself to my mother with a rope as thick as a man's wrist. One end was wrapped securely around his hand, the other tied to a metal strut on the edge of the roof. It looked like a safety line, but in reality, both their lives depended entirely on his grip. We called the police on the way, but right now, the most important thing was to keep him calm. But I had never in my life seen someone so completely unhinged. The sheer desperation coming off him, that willingness to take everyone down with him, was so intense you could feel the chill of it in the night air. I had no doubt that the slightest provocation would send him and my mother over the edge. Olivia. Lucas, he said, you finally made it. Jerry, what the hell do you want? I don't want anything, he sneered. I want revenge. What else do I have left to do, huh? What else is there? With a simple touch, I could access all the information stored within that sphere of light. At the flick of a finger, another person's entire life story would pour into my consciousness. If I'd had this power back in school, I would have been the poster child for academic success. In just a single day, I absorbed mountains of knowledge: philosophy, economics, medicine, and the countless stories of human joy and sorrow. In that torrent of information, my own personality began to settle, becoming calmer. But when I touched the next sphere of light, I froze. Because it contained the story of Olivia's life. Or more accurately, her mission. It turned out her systems had activated on the exact same day. And our missions were to make the other fall in love. Thinking back, all of our push and pull, every step closer and every step apart, suddenly made sense. There had always been an invisible, powerful force manipulating the distance between us. In the beginning, Olivia was just like me, simply trying to complete her mission. That was why she had gone along with things that night. The media frenzy the next day, the flash marriage, the license, it was all her master plan. Her first move in her mission to win me over. But when our relationship stalled, she got desperate. She was the one who lured Jerry back, setting this whole tragedy in motion. No, it wasn't a tragedy. Not yet. When she opened her eyes again, the harsh white light was disorienting. But the sharp smell of antiseptic and the faint sound of footsteps in the hall told her one thing. She was back in the real world. Wait a second. Olivia turned her head and saw me lying in the hospital bed. She had been by my side for days. The moment my eyes opened, a long, shaky breath of relief escaped her lips. I slowly opened my eyes, meeting her look of profound relief. "You look happy," I said. "Is that because I'm alive? Or because you think you can still complete your mission?" The flash of pure shock in her eyes was incredibly satisfying. In all our 3 years together, it was the first time I'd ever seen her completely speechless. You know? She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. I smiled. "From now on, I have a mission of my own." "What mission?" "To cook for you." "Oh God, please no." This narrative masterfully uses the concept of a system as a metaphor for the predetermined scripts and societal roles we all face, challenging the very notion of free will. Lucas's rebellion against his hollow destiny becomes a universal struggle, made more profound by the revelation that Olivia was simultaneously navigating her own hidden mission, serving as a powerful lesson in empathy for the invisible rules that guide others. The story's true triumph lies not in fulfilling a pre-written romance, but in the conscious choice to tear up the script after the truth is revealed, ultimately suggesting that authentic love and freedom are found only when we stop being mere characters in our lives and have the courage to become its co-authors. This story follows Lucas, a contract husband scorned as a freeloader, who is unexpectedly summoned back to save his wealthy wife Olivia's family after her idealized white moonlight rival betrays them. Leveraging a game-like system, in his mind, Lucas not only thwarts the blackmail scheme and rescues the family from crisis, but also, through an intricate dance of push and pull with the aloof Olivia, deviates from the system's preordained tragic script to protect his own love and family ties. The climax reveals a greater secret. Olivia has a system too, and they were both mission targets tasked with strategically winning each other over from the very beginning. Ultimately, after a life-or-death ordeal, they see through the manipulated game, choosing to cast aside the script and begin a new, genuine, and playfully defiant relationship of their own.